Let me take a moment and talk about Riverside.fm. It allows you to record studio quality audio and up to 4K video. When you need to record audio and video, Riverside.fm can do it. So if you're looking for a hero platform for all your recording needs, from podcasts to webinars to any video content, Riverside.fm. I've got a promo code for you where you'll receive a 30% discount on the first 3 months of your subscription. I'll give it to you twice. The promo code is SHIPIT. All one word, SHIPIT, and you'll pick up a 30% discount on your first 3 months of your subscription. Riverside.fm.
One of the most exciting levels of football is college football, Division I college football, and we have a great opportunity to talk to a guy that does the History of College Football podcast. Jay Abramson, my friend, is coming on to talk about his book and his podcast, History of College Football, and it's coming up next.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com and the SportsJerseyDispatch.com. We have sort of a great interview that we're going to be splitting and putting on both sites, both podcasts, and it's a really interesting one. One of our friends, Jay Abramson, from History of College Football podcast. You've heard him. I know everybody has. He's had quite a few episodes on the history of the game in college football. I've been on his program about a year ago, and just an interesting guy. We're going to have him come in here and talk about a few things here. Jay Abramson, welcome to the Pigpen.
Oh, thank you so much, Darren. I'm honored to be on your phenomenal podcast. You do such an incredible job. The amount of information, the amount of content you put forth. I admire you, sir. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're too kind. You're too kind. Well, we want to make sure we talk about your podcast. We'd like to start off, learn a little bit about Jay Abramson and what makes you so fascinated with the game of college football.
I appreciate you asking. There's nothing like the sport in my mind. You go to these games and you see student section, you see their parents, you see their grandparents. And then if you stop and think about it, for some of the older schools, the grandparents were there as students looking onto their stands, and they would see their grandparents. The sense of unity, family, and just the sheer excitement that ends up resulting on the field. Nothing like college football in my mind. So I dedicate my podcast and I dedicate my website to college football.
Yeah, there's just so much pageantry in the college game, and you get those gigantic crowds at some of those stadiums that the pro game pales in comparison to some of those parts of it. Just the fandom of the game. Very, very passionate indeed. So I can definitely see where your interest is on there. Now, Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast? I'm sure most of the listeners are familiar with it, but for those that may not be, tell us what you could expect when you put in an episode of the History of College Football podcast.
About a year and a half ago, I decided to start the podcast with just a simple first goal, which is to do the college football history of a team in each podcast. And so my goal was to cover the 130 FBS teams. As the podcast migrated, I decided to do special episodes, everything from top 10 reasons to love HBCU football to the greatest 20 teams of all time, a countdown, and so on. Guests have been generous enough to give their time. So I've had guest appearances of David Klinger, record-setting quarterback, Octavius McCoy, record-setting running back, Phil Steele, who does a marvelous college football preview, fellow podcasters. You have been on my show as well. Authors, also Lisa Kelly discussed her 2 books on Notre Dame. One was a Notre Dame cooking book. So again, the podcast range, there'll either be a specific team or there'll be a special episode of various genres. By mid-April, I will have finished my initial goal and have posted the college football history of every one of the 130 FBS teams. I'm near abouts done right now, and it'll be the second week of February that I will finish it.
Wow, that is quite an accomplishment. I can tell you for one that has a goal and you have a certain number in mind to reach. Mine was 100, getting the NFL, all NFL jerseys, all 0 through 99. That's only 100, but you hitting 130 different college programs. That is just an excellent job. Well done, my friend.
Yours is far more creative than mine. I mean, that's just an incredible accomplishment you had when you completed that. Mazel tov to you. Bravo to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Now, you don't just dabble in college football in the podcasting realm, though, Jay. I see that you've had a book out recently. It's on Amazon. I believe it's also called The History of College Football. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So my podcasts are a snippet. They're 10 to 15 minutes each, just talking about specifically for a college football team, their first season, Heisman Trophy winners, greatest coach, most stunning wins and losses and ties, their rival, and a section I call Hullabaloo, which is just the unusual specific tidbits of history that is interesting to that specific team, and every team has them, and I finish with the mascot. But the book itself is a book that covers the college football history of each one of the 130 FBS teams, but it's the full-blown version. So it will have much more in-depth, maybe 3 times that of each podcast. In addition, there are special interest features as well at the end of the book.
Okay. Now, and you have your website too. Maybe you could give us the call sign for your website so we can find that.
Oh, thank you. It is historyofcollegefootball.com, historyofcollegefootball, historyofcollegefootball.com. And on that website is a link to each of the podcasts, a page for the team podcast, a page for the special features, and then some other information on this date, what had occurred, and when teams first entered college football, and even a gallery page of pictures that have been dolled up with a little bit of art, both past and present, for teams, coaches, and players. It's been a work of love and quite an interesting year and a half, Darren.
Yeah, I wanted that. You segued right into my next question, because I know on your site, I've been looking at it for, probably almost that full year and a half. You have some very interesting pictures where you've done some colorizations and things to make them very interesting. And do you do those yourself?
Yes, I do that myself. And really, I just started that on the website about 3-4 months into the website, because it occurred to me as I was doing these podcasts, when you talk about people way back, Walter Camp, even people more recent, Barry Switzer, I'm not sure the younger generation has any clue what Barry Switzer would look like if it wasn't for TV, but certainly, people like Bud Wilkinson and so on, they don't know what they look like. And so I wanted to bring this to life. People talk about the 1901 Michigan team. Well, what did these players look like? What was their expressions on their faces? So I wanted to bring to life college football with more than just words, dates, numbers, stats, analysis.
Well, you definitely do that because, folks, you definitely have to check this out. And all these links that Jay's calling out here, I'm going to put links in the show notes of both podcasts that pertain to Jay talking on there, and you'll be able to look them up right away. To go to his website, go to his Amazon site for the book, go to his podcast. But these pictures that we're talking about and these colorizations that you've done, these things are like works of art. These are things that people would want to hang, on the wall. Jay, these are great things, and they're telling a little bit of history. So my hat's off to you on that.
Oh, you're far too kind. Thank you, sir.
Now, you're also very active on social media, Jay. If you want to share those call signs again, we'll put them on the show notes also. But why don't you go ahead and speak them too, please?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I have a Twitter account at HistColFootball. That's at HISTCOL FOOTBALL. And my Twitter site really is a Twitter site that obviously it makes people aware when my podcasts come out, which is twice a week on Tuesdays and Saturdays, by the way. But also goes back to, on this date, what happened, or happy birthday to a certain player, or just a memories of, Eddie Robinson and so on and so forth down the line. I try to include pictures. Again, I just want this to be as visual as possible. I try to do it as objectively as possible. I really never put in my own opinions because I want people to draw their own conclusions. And then sometimes in the comments they talk about, they feel strongly one way or another about a certain team. And, I remember I put up John McKay had so many national championships, and somebody chimed in, well, that one year they didn't really deserve it. And I just think it's all part of the love for college football. It really is a community engaging,
That's for sure. That's a very polarizing level of football, probably more so than anything, because if you're an LSU fan, you're not liking Bama too much, and vice versa. Ohio State and Michigan, those are definitely you don't really even talk about the other team in some cases. I know I border Ohio, and there's some of the Ohio State fans will not even say Michigan. They'll say the M word, or the guys to the Northwest or whatever. So some great rivalries, some and it goes beyond the one game a year that they play. So yeah, definitely an interesting and fascinating fandom in college football. And we're glad that you're preserving this history, because that is just fantastic, just focusing in on that college football and so many interesting people that you talk to and that you talk about. And we really appreciate you.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. It's funny. Some of the most greatest discourses I have is when I say happy birthday to a Heisman Trophy winner, and people chime in, oh, that year he shouldn't have won the Heisman Trophy. Or the other end of the extreme, where this is one of the 5 greatest players that ever lived. And it's just great to hear people's opinions.
Yeah, that's great when you get some reaction, both positive and negative. You're doing something right when you have, you got that people speaking about it even after you're done, posting it. So that's great.
Yes, sir, Darren. You're preaching to the choir there. Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you sharing the information about the book and the website. But now we have a special thing that you're going to be telling us about on Sports Jersey Dispatch on one of your favorite players and uniforms. And maybe you could speak to that.
Oh, absolutely. And strangely enough, it's from the world of pro football. I grew up in the 60s, and my favorite team was the Kansas City Chiefs, and the rival was the Oakland Raiders. And Jim Otto, the center for the Oakland Raiders, played for the Miami Hurricanes back in college in the 1960s. His jersey number, 00, which always fascinated me. And he was only one of 3 players who saw action in each of the team's 140 regular season games over the entire AFL 10-year history. During that time, he was all AFL acclaimed for those 10 consecutive seasons. And so he is one of really 3 players who can say that had saw action each one of the 140 regular season games. He was a tremendous all-star, a tremendous football player, and a spur in my ankle because he gave the Chiefs an awful hard time for many, many years there.
Yeah, that's great when you're talking about, one of your players that you're honoring is that guy that your team played against. That is one of the highest honors that somebody could ever have. I mean, I'm a Steelers fan, but I have all the respect in the world for Ray Lewis, who, was, like you said, is a real pain in your side when you watched him on Sundays. But same thing, Jim Otto, a great story. And I love how he chose that 00 back when it was legal in the NFL, by the way, and the AFL. And he, having the O on each end of his last name, that's what he put on his shirt. So that was great.
Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that.
Well, Jay, I appreciate you once again for showing up here and talking to us a little bit of football, some college football with the books on Pigskin Dispatch, talking about Jim Otto and his great Raiders jersey 00 on the Sports Jersey Dispatch. And we appreciate you having on, Jay, and make sure everybody go and check out his podcast. We will have, again, on the show notes, we have all his information here. Check out his website, and buy that book. There's an Amazon link there. Take a look at his book and get it. It's a real affordable price, and it's a great book to get. So, Jay Abramson, thank you very much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a tremendous honor, Darren. You have an open invite to come back anytime on my podcast, and it's wonderful to see you again, sir. It's been, about a year or so. I appreciate you, sir.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.